Janie will need to unmute for the roll call.
Not yet. Don't mind me bellowing, everybody.
Paul Hayes.
Now,
Dave M. Spoker.
Present.
Scott Brackett.
Here.
Charles Burrows.
Here.
Mike Finnegan.
Mike, you need to unmute so you can say here.
For my computer, you push the space bar.
Tim Gurlitt.
Okay, Mike Finnegan here.
Tim Gurlick.
here.
John Stutzman.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
You're muted, Carl. Carl, if you hit the space bar, it'll unmute.
Kingman Airport. I'm fine, thank you.
Janie, we can all hear your phone call.
Yes, it is 976922. That's correct. Are you at the 9945163325 ID number? 8453325.
Carl, if your space bar does not unmute you, hover with your mouse over the lower left corner of your screen, and you should get your mute unmute button. You may want to log out and log back in.
Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
You were just unmuted on my screen, and now you're muted again. I'm gonna have to reach out to IT to see if they can help me, because I have everyone marked as unmuted. Scott and Dave, you're unmuted.
Yep, is Carl back on yet?
I don't know where Carl went up to.
There's Carl signing back on.
Oh, there he is.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Hallelujah. Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all. Okay, approval of the minutes. Now, that all came out in the packet. I know there was a spelling or an item or two. The fire bombers were listed as seat airplanes, and that's the actual abbreviation for a single seat fire bomber that were supposed to be here. There's a couple other points, but if anybody has anything that really needs to be changed, we can do that. Anybody? Okay, a motion for approval of the minutes.
Come on, Scott.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, yeah. So Tim made the motion. A second.
I'll
Second.
second him.
Speak a name so Jeannie can get it.
Dave Amspoker seconded it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposition. All right. Well, we have a different procedure for the public comments. Due to the pandemic, the meeting will be held through the computer. Public comments can be submitted in writing to the airport office via email or by hand delivery to the airport office. Comments will be accepted up to 9 a.m. on August 17th, up too late. All comments will be shared with the commissioner, made part of the public record, and they can be made for the next meeting. This is on channel 4 on YouTube at youtube.com City of King. Okay. First item on the reports, business park staff report.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Just kind of go through, you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
So a little bit about rail. I do have some May and June numbers in regards to the amount of cars that have come into the park. In May, we had 532 cars stored at the industrial park, and we had 119 cars switched for businesses. In June, we had 501 cars stored in the park, and we had 151 cars that were switched for businesses. In regards to prospects and opportunities we've been working on, in June, we had 7 prospects that we submitted properties on or buildings on for potential businesses. And as a reminder, to kind of compare, back in February, we had 3 prospects. And then, of course, March came along, and we had 0 prospects at that time, which was the height of the shutdown and some of the unknowns with regards to COVID. In April, we had 1 prospect that we submitted sites on. And then in May, it jumped up to 5. And June, obviously it's 7. In July, we saw probably another 6 or 7 prospects that we submitted. So, and really when you look at the previous year, we've had more opportunities or prospects looking at the park as a viable option compared to over last year. I think part of that is because we also have the biggest amount of inventory in regards to buildings available for potential businesses to come in. And so you have companies that need existing space. We have close to 100 million square foot with the old Guardian fiberglass building, and then Cascades vacancy, which is another 300 and some thousand square foot. So we are seeing some movement within the park. Within the next week or so, there's going to be an announcement for an expansion. So we'll look forward to doing that when we're able to make that announcement. And talk a little bit about the expansion of the industrial park, the 1,800 acres. We've been working with those at the city in regards to putting that up for what's going to be required, which is to do the process of voting on it through the public. And so any properties that are over 1.5 million, you have to take it to the voters. And the issue that you're going to be faced with is basically in order to do that, you've got to go through the process of putting it on a ballot. There's a lot of cost to that. We had a space open on the upcoming November or the November election. And so we took the opportunity to basically go to council and we had to declare basically the land as surplus. And we did that on the July 7th agenda. And then we had to then go and adopt a resolution and designate the election date and the purpose, which was approved on the July 21st meeting. So we'll be able to have that on the ballot on November 3rd to be able to propose to the voters if the city is going to be able to sell that property. And so we, you know, all that time is going to be consolidated. So once the land is released from the FAA, as we go through that process, this will be a process a business will not have to wait for. And when we've been talking with businesses over the last 5 months, we've had some opportunities for some large parcel of land sales, but they've really, with all the unknowns of the election and the land release, you know, the more unknowns a business has, the less likely they are to, you know, locate in your park. And so by getting rid of this unknown potentially in November, if the voters approve it or decide not to, we'll at least know where we stand on that. So with that, you know, we've seen a lot of activity. It's been very positive, but of course it takes time. You know, these businesses are looking throughout the whole West, and but it's been positive. So with that, if there are any questions, that's my update.
Okay, no questions? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The subcommittees are next. If you're there, Scott, why don't you give us some information on the navigation easements? And in the packet today, there's a good bit of information on all from we've got some ways to go. We're not taking action, of course, on this, but we'll put all the cards on the table. We have to work this out.
Carl, you skipped a airport staff report.
Excuse me. You're absolutely correct. We get a staff report from Steve. And this is a huge amount in your packet. I hope everybody's been through it.
So I'm going to do things a little differently than I've done in the past. Start this off with, here's the news. and I'll be asking for questions throughout this. So based aircraft, we're down to about 99, storage aircraft about 210. And again, I apologize that you all didn't get my report. We were late in putting all this together, but fuel flowage for total fuel sold this year, 168,725 and 50. June last, let's see here, total was 13,671 50 gallons. Of that, 3,514 were avgas and 10,157 were jet. In regards to revenues, to date, we're at 49,918. In regards to airport expenses, 33,153. In regards to encumbrances, 19,953. I'll run through the FAA and ADOT coordination and then ask for any questions. So the overlay grant will be going to the City Council tomorrow night, the 18th. Basically, we've gotten the two pieces now, 2.6 million roughly for the supplemental, and I believe almost 300,000 for the entitlement. Once we go to City Council and get the approval for the city manager to sign off on those two grants, which we'll send in electronically probably within the next day or two, we'll go to send that to ADOT, and we'll get our $127,000, almost $128,000 match from them. Our match for this entire project will be $128,000 as well. I'll be going back to City Council probably the next meeting I can get on in regards to the construction management contract and the contractor's contract to get approval on those two. And we'll send them off to FAA for their approval as well. The ADOT grant, which is 180,000. I see I had 190, so I was being too optimistic there. For design of taxiway Bravo, that's working through. We're coming up to a 30% review process. ADOT requires that. So that should be going off in the next week or two for their review, and then we'll finish that up. CARES Act grant, I believe we've gotten the money for that. That's $69,000. The goal is to work on getting that fencing relocated in September. We are going to utilize the city procurement process, which will save us some money for that, as opposed to going through a federal process, which we can do since it's the CARES Act. The master plan, and again, thank you for all your input on that. Final meeting was held this last month, and they're working forward to get that completed probably late August, early September. I think there's some minor items to address, but for the most part, there weren't any major items there. And then ADOT has offered us a $1.3 million 90% grant for construction on the first phase of taxiway Bravo. Right now, the idea is we get that off to the City Council in September, and then get that in the building phase for next spring. So any questions on all of that so far? Okay, I'll jump into development and maintenance project. The draw sites, we've worked with the legal team. They are doing up some two ideas in regards to going back to our friends with the Department of Justice. I will pester them tomorrow to see where that's at and how quickly we can get that off to our friends at DOJ. So hopefully they can start to work through that. I continue to research aircraft storage industry folks. I have an outfit out, an agreement out to Cavu. They want to dismantle, I think, 10 aircraft. I'll pester them and see where that's at. If that goes, we'll have 5 different companies on site, which is a big deal because in the past it's just been one. We're working on policy development still for going after non-payments. Nothing new there. The pilot's lounge is near complete. I need to get some signs made up for the 2 entry doors, the combinations. I believe Gary will be working with the cafe on Wi-Fi access. Right now, the thought is we're going to use their access. That'll cut costs for us significantly. As you've all noticed, the terminal fencing's removed. I'll talk about landscaping here in a little bit. And again, we continue to mow and spray hundreds of acres out there. As Bennett outlined, we're working through the 1,800 acre land release. We had a phone meeting late last week with FAA. They've required some, not additional items, but some detail on some items. We'll be working to get all that together and off to them probably within the next week or 2. And again, we're working with the Kingman Aviation Heritage Center for a temporary lease for some storage for aircraft here at the airport, down by Paul Gaines area. And again, I've started tracking heavy aircraft, so anytime anybody lands or takes off and they happen to be here, we document the kind of airplane and then come up with a weight for said airplane. And again, the premise for that is in future grants, FAA is going to require that we have some paperwork that documents the number of operations of heavy aircraft. The hangar occupancy, the usual dynamic here, 44 hangars occupied, 44, 43, 2 that are vacant, tie downs that are occupied, 10, executive hangars, wait list 2, team hangars 0, covered tie downs 8. Again, talked about the 1,800 acres, so nothing new on that. No zoning cases, no noise complaints, and that's it for my report. Any questions?
Yes, Steve, I was curious on the Wi-Fi access from the cafe. Does that look like a likely thing or something that's actually in progress of a deal being made?
I believe it is. I think Gary has been in contact with them in the past. Then the COVID situation hit. We just need to pick that back up and move on it. But I think Gary's online there, so he can address that specifically if he wishes to.
Jim, we can currently work with the cafe, and we have a booklet sitting on the desk in the pilot's lounge, which gives the Wi-Fi access codes and everything. So at least for now, it's okay. It's maybe not the best it could be, but what we were trying to do was our IT department had determined a substantial cost to tie it in over here. And so what I had asked, and they were a little nervous about it, was them to beef up their Wi-Fi, and we would become, a payment partner with them. So, but for right now, it's in there, and the pilot's just to flip the book open. It has all that information, along with restaurants, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, this is Bill. I have a question regarding your report. I understand you weren't able to get it out to us. Will we be getting that so we can add it to our packet?
Yes, you will. And in fact, there's another report that's part of your packet that you'll be getting as well, but we'll talk about it a little later. The rates and fees, you'll actually get a spreadsheet you can all read.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to having to get your high school magnifying or microscope out to try to read through the comparison of different airports. So you'll be getting that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm pleased with the progress we've been having on the Pilot's Lounge. I was over there earlier today, and we've got the board up. We've got a drafting table that you can spread charts out on. And I did look through the book that someone made up with hotels, some restaurants, and the taxi companies. So that was good to see. There's still some other things that would be nice, and I'm grateful for that.
I do have a question about the Pilot's Lounge. How are the pilots getting the combination?
They, at this point, it's not published, but a number of you are aware of it. We will be putting some signs out, and probably something to the effect of Unicom frequency or something like that. And again, there'll be metallized signs that will stick on the interior, inside the terminal, and then one on the exterior as well. So that's how they'll figure it out. So if they're a pilot and they use the CTAF, they will understand what that combination is.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
As an additional point of information, we are also have ordered a large stand-up rack with the ability to hold a number of brochures. And so our visitor center will be supplying those appropriate brochures as they did in the past, but it'll also contain spots for our economic development, our airport flyers, etc. They can go in there. So that will be probably coming within the next week or so.
Gary, one thing I've seen at other airport pilot lounges is like a guest book where people can make comments, things like that. Has any thought been given to possibly having a guest book where people can say, I'm here from Tucumcari, New Mexico, and it was nice to know where we could get a place to stay for the night. Things like that.
Lisa's been shepherding this project on the internal stuff in there, so we'll get the, that is something we can do. Yeah, I don't think where that's a big thing, so that would be something we can add there too. So you also noticed in there that you had the large wall map, which you all had requested with the string that you use, and additional charts there on the table and stuff. And so I believe Steve was also we're going to be adding a small microwave in there that you all requested too. So I think we'll just, there is by the way, I thought something uniquely that we did was the 48-star flag, by the way. So it sort of has that authentic look to it there. We're doing the same thing with the brochure rack. It has that vintage look.
Well, that's good, and I'm grateful for all the effort that's been put into it.
One thing that was suggested to me earlier, and I did discuss it with Gary, we don't know yet, but they have the continuous video at City Council on both ends of the building. And we're going to look into getting one of those monitor screens that would show the same thing. Plus, there's a rack coming out with tourist stuff that will be there in the terminal building. So there's some more possibilities that I think would enhance anybody's interest in information on the area. Anything else?
Thing, as we speak, Carl, Lisa had made arrangements. That window is being replaced as we're talking. So.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, that's it on staff report. Back to the committees. Scott, can you talk about navigation easements?
Sure. Howdy, all. Steve put out a little blurb here on navigation easements. It's part of the package that you have. It gives a little bit of background. There's more information. We were both busy. We didn't have a meeting. So the simplest thing I can say is it's still fall, so technically I'm not behind, but we're going to be meeting a little bit later here. Everyone was just too busy. I mean, between Steve and the projects and with them getting all approved and that, we'll have time here. So you can read his, and if you have any more detailed questions, I've got more data, but it's not in the pack. Questions?
Okay. Tim, on the website.
Really, the only update I have now is that Steve and I have agreed to arrange time to meet. We'll go through it and invite the other folks, Mike and Paul, over to just kind of go through it, make some updates. There's definitely some content we can add to it, and just get it more populated with information. So we'll be meeting with Steve on that.
Okay, I do have another question on that. I did talk to Paul Gaines about his letter, and also some from Travis indicated some of the same thing, and that was using Facebook for advertising. And I don't, my answer was, I don't have any idea who would do that. I don't know if you would even want to consider adding that to the website load, or if you found anybody in the city who's doing Facebook for the city that could do some of that for the airport along with what they're already doing. Or is that going to be just totally a separate thing?
Well, they're separate but complementary things. And as you know, this has been going on, that discussion's been for a while, that there was a meeting held at, I guess during a workshop at City Council chambers, where they said that they wanted to stick with one city Facebook page. I kind of stopped complaining about it about that time, but there's been others that agree with the point I made, that they're two very separate audiences, that a Facebook page for the airport is a different audience than people that are interested in more than other municipal issues. And I still support the issue. I don't know, maybe Gary had suggested there's another person with tourism. I'm not sure. I've read it and I can't remember where I've seen it at, that may be able to help in that direction.
Tim, I'll jump in there. On the Facebook thing, it's really been touchy in the city because of the misuse of certainly Facebook, and so they tightened down on that. But our airport consultant, the one that helped put our marketing program together, has issued a white paper for us, and so we haven't had a chance yet to review it in detail, but to talk about the very thing that you just hit upon. So, and that is, how you use them, why they're useful, just certainly in this day and age. So we will probably be addressing that within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
I'd be glad to help out any way I can if there's movement on that. Definitely.
We'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
And I did tell Paul that I would get back to Paul on that issue. So if I understand you correctly, Gary, that the use of Facebook for the airport in conjunction with the city Facebook or separately is under consideration, along with the information from our consultant, and something should be happening at some point in time down the road.
We just got the report about a week ago. So we have to take a look and see, and then sit down with the rest of the city staff.
Okay, I think that's a good answer as we can come up with.
And
Okay,
Gary, can I interject something here on that?
Go ahead.
I totally agree with Tim on the Facebook thing. I think it absolutely should be a separate entity. Everybody is driven to the site by what other people are doing and saying, and it kind of works exponentially. They'll tell a friend, and another tell a friend, and so on and so forth. But then you got to have somebody pay attention to it. You get people that are complaining and maybe using swear words and stuff like that. You got to be able to block them and stuff. It is a lot more work. I mean, I've had a site that had as many as 18,000 followers on it, and you got to watch them, because you'll get some nutcase that'll just rake everybody over the coals, and you just have to, take care of that part of it. And I don't think it should be attached to the city. It's an aviation thing, and should be all aviation in my mind.
You certainly are right. We use it very heavily in our tourism business because it goes hand in hand, but we monitor it very, very closely for that very same reason.
Another thing that came up, Lisa had recently contacted me about a Kingman Airport Facebook page that is up. And I kind of knew about it from long ago, but I think I'd since forgotten about it. When I went and took a look, it's been pretty active, and it's an unofficial, it's marked as unofficial page. It's been up for about 10 years. And I'm not sure, Mike, if you know any more about that, but it's been up and people are using it because if you tag the location that you're at, that comes up and it puts your post on that page. So it kind of has a life of its own. And there is recent postings to it.
I made a note. Thank you.
Okay, did you have anything else, Mike?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, create another subcommittee. It's aircraft or airfield, not aircraft, but airport maintenance. That'll be John Stutzman. As you know, he's out here sometimes on the weekend, sometimes during the week, and he's got a fair amount of time for that. And what I would like for everybody to do, just talk to pilots in general. He could be the contact guy for somebody sees something that needs some attention, so they don't everybody have to call Steve, and Steve and his guys will work it out. So there's a way for John to get that information. So instead of getting 4 calls because there's a piece of debris someplace, they'll only get 1. I don't know that it'll work out all that well, but it's hopeful. And John agreed to do that. So we'll make an announcement on that. That'll go through the EAA. That's a lot of the people that are here are connected with the EAA. It's possible we could even put it out with the invoices for the hangars. There's if somebody's out, I'm here a lot of weekends. Steve or Scott's here usually on Saturdays. Tim is. We might be able to handle something without bringing in a staff member on overtime for some rather insignificant item. But having a number to call, I think might help. So we'll try that, and hopefully it'll all work out well with Steve and the maintenance guys. Okay, terminal grounds landscaping, we can get back to that, Steve.
Hey, Carl, can we back up? I was waiting for you to ask for questions. When did we establish that subcommittee?
I just did it.
No, that's not how it works. If
Okay.
if
All
we're
right.
going to have a subcommittee, we need to discuss it, and this commission needs to suggest it.
Okay, then we have to put it on as an agenda item as a new subcommittee.
I agree.
Okay, so it'll be on the next month.
Okay.
All right.
Terminal landscaping. About a week ago, I had the opportunity to take the terminal landscaping on. I contacted our assistant city engineer, and a team of us walked the site late last Friday. There were a whole mess of details that we discussed: drainage, shaping the slopes, some warning reflectors. And if you look behind me, you'll see 2 reflectors. Those cost about $31 a pop. One's red for hazard, one's blue, like we would have initially on the sides of Taxiway Bravo. They're a very easy install. Right now the thought is we'll probably put 3 or 4 of them out there where the fence used to be by the terminal. We might buy some extras and stick them on the top of the mounds on the draw site, just as an added, I'll say target to hit, not that you would hit it. But yeah, the reflectors, some of the other items we talked about was placing the foundation for the new airport sign. And there are a whole litany of other details. I mean, there's a drainage pipe that goes down to the 48-inch pipe that runs underneath there. So within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a city survey crew out here. They will generate data in regards to topographical items there. They will create plans for the project. We'll get to hold the blue stake and locate all the utilities and other hidden items we have in that area. And then I gather the city has gone through a ranking and rating process for different firms that do work like this. In essence, what we'll do is utilize that system to actually have somebody do the landscaping. That'll save a whole lot of time with procurement. So in other words, we won't have to do a SOQ or an RFP to get somebody to come in here and do it. Right now, the guesstimate is that the entire project range, and again, this is just from a walkthrough with the assistant city engineer, will be about $30,000. And again, given the current city workload, we figure it'll probably take 6 months to get the whole thing completed. So all that being said, any questions?
Yes, Steve, I don't know how much this ties in, but I'd heard some discussion regarding the existing memorials and monuments that are at the base of the control tower. Is that affected by this project?
My understanding is no, that's going to be a separate item, but I think Gary can jump in on that.
Yeah, Tim, it is a separate item. I've asked Bill Schilling, who works with the historical stuff. They have a group of people that have done some other restoration around town on certain monuments and things. So at least to take a look and see what we can do to bring them back to their original glory.
Okay, yeah, because we'd looked at the synthetic gunnery monument, which
for posterity.
I'm sorry. We had been looking at the synthetic gunnery training monument there, which I've seen photos of it during World War II, where it was marking an area of training, and it looks like it had been restored once already. We looked at the materials and the lettering in that, and yeah, again, I have contact info for Bill as well, so I might reach out to him to discuss that further. So, because we definitely don't want to see that go away, but we want to see it restored. And I think there's other parties that might be willing to jump in and help on that too.
Thank you.
Hey, Carl, when you get a chance, I still have something for old business.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, back to the maintenance subcommittee. I see you do have an opportunity on the agenda to appoint members to subcommittees. So we can go ahead and discuss that and complete that today. That's your
Okay.
item 4A there. So was it your thought to just have a one-member committee?
He could get some help. That's certainly because he can't be, involved or answer the phone even all the time. And this is not a 24-hour thing, but it's, my thinking is if we could get a number of people with the same, hey, this needs some, it only has to go to Steve or his guys once. And that's just saves their time. That was my whole, and we might get things, especially if it's brand new and it's really a safety issue, it may get there a lot quicker. Because I don't know that we have too much not left in signs that talk about an emergency number, and I don't really know how that's being handled. Arizona still has an after hours phone call that'll get you a fuel truck, but there's not a whole lot that we have when the administration building is closed, and we might need a little bit more in the way of signs there. Probably should have the one on fuel in the terminal too, because if they go there and they got a jet, they can't serve themselves for some reason. couldn't back it out or whatever. They might not even go there if it looks like there's nobody there. They go to the terminal. So I'm sure we'll come up with more ideas on signage that and information that will help. But this may work out, and if everybody's on their toes and we get this maintenance way caught up, it may not be an issue. They do have to drive the runways and taxiways every day and some nights. So I'm not expecting much stuff like that. But it's a run over coyote could easily be there, but they can't get in there like they could. So we're not seeing anywhere near the animals that we used to get out in the ramp and runway area.
Okay, so is it your idea to post John's personal telephone number around the airport? Was that the plan?
Well, at least to let any pilots know and the EAA know, and that's where I said it could go out with the invoices with the city. If it's during the day, there's no reason why they can't call the administrative office and get it. But sometimes people feel like they've got to tell somebody.
Okay, so you're talking about getting the word out to our local pilots.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't see somebody flying in here having that. The chances are slim that they're going to have an issue that needs some attention right away.
Okay, I'm starting to see your idea.
Yeah, when you have an issue, you can call like the number on the gate. It goes to city dispatch, and then they get a hold of Steve, I believe, is the way it works. So there's numbers, it works right now, but that's for safety items or something that presents a hazard. Other than that, you're just talking about basic maintenance or something you'd see that should fall in line with that. Then we get a hold of John, correct? That's what.
Yeah, no, definitely. This is not something you call the fire department for. That needs to be done. You can call 911 and get that even.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think it would hurt to have a member on the commission kind of be an advocate,
right,
for what local airport users see as maintenance issues. So it's good to have somebody that has a voice on that specifically.
Yep, that's a good point, Tim.
Gentlemen, before we move any further on this, maybe what we really should do is be talking to the city attorney, because you're putting a third party in here between the airport, and the maintenance thing. So if something was to be missed or whatever, what's the point of responsibility? So I wonder if before we would move on this today, or you put it on next month's agenda, that we make sure that there is no legal hole in there. Just a thought.
Yeah, and I would agree, especially on any kind of life safety issues, emergency things. When they're talking about the phone number, I'm thinking you don't want to put that phone number out on a sign, because that would then probably put liability on that person for being responsible for it, in no position of authority to do that.
Yeah, I don't see this as being a critical safety issue problem. That should not be handled that way. If you should use the fire, police, or maybe the city dispatch, and that's probably all they can do, unless they can call some of the maintenance people. If like there's an abandoned airplane that's flew in and ground looped in the middle of the runway, that's problem, no question about it. I wouldn't expect that to go to John. So there's also, how's it all going to get handled on the city end with the staff? It's an idea that I thought was worth working through and see if it'll work. As I know, there's been, I'm sure many of you get it too. You get 5 people that tell you about the same thing, that, oh, they should have been doing this. And eventually they get there, but they may not know about it for a while. So depends on what area of the airport it is and how often it gets looked at. It's not really likely to be a taxiway or a runway issue, but it could be there's a hinge on a gate that's almost ready to break. A good example.
Gary,
I think what we should do is table this.
Gary, do you think we would be able to get some feedback from the city attorney between now and the next meeting on this subject matter?
Yes, Carl's Cooper's very responsive, so I don't see that as a problem. We can simply pose the question. I mean, you're not asking for, something really complicated here, but is there a point of responsibility? My worry would be more to the fellow actually taking the call who's just happens to be in the loop.
Yeah, agreed. And yep, I think we could probably finesse the language of what we're trying to do here with some advice
Yes.
from Mr. Cooper. But I think, again, I see it more of as kind of a local point of contact for the users, as an advocacy on the commission for addressing things. Again, a single collection point, but not an emergency response type of position at all.
Agreed. Okay, so is that something you would do, Gary, to talk to Carl, or is that Steve's job?
Well, I'll talk with Steve and we'll make a decision on maybe contacting Carl both so that he gets the story of what we heard today. We'll take a look at the minutes too before we talk with him.
All right, we'll delay that then till next time. Okay, new business, airport budget report. There's a lot of material there, so I hope everybody's had a chance to go through it, and we'll let Steve roll on it.
And my apologies on this. I got this done yesterday afternoon. So as you all know, there's a lot to it. You'll note under the estimated income amounts and sources, the amount for this current fiscal year that we believe we're going to make. I believe the parking in new areas, those are the guesstimates out in the infield and out by the CARES Act fencing that's going to get moved. So that's a forecast number that's not real at this point. Jumping down to the capital projects, the construction dates, completion, and all that. You'll note I've listed everything but the draw site. The Vice Mayor advised me of that, and thank you, Travis. I apologize for that to everybody. The airport land release project, you see the funding for that, $198,000. That's all local out of the airport enterprise fund. Right now, I believe the completion date we're shooting for is April or sooner. That's all going to depend on their friends at the FAA and their ability to work that project through. Taxiway Bravo, as you all know, we're working through that as we speak. Total project on that's $200,000. And again, the idea is that we'll get that done by November or later. Runway 321, both the supplemental and entitlement grants reached the city manager as of, I think, Friday. We'll be going after an ADOT grant, but that's a no-brainer. We just send them copies of the FAA grant documents, and then they throw their 2 cents in, no pun intended. That entire project will be about 3.1 million, and you see the breakdowns for ADOT and FAA funding there. The DROS project, which again, I didn't put on this list, again, that's 100% funded by DOJ. We're in the assessment phase of that. They're working up 2 ideas to throw back at them. The estimate completion for that, I'm saying, is 2021. That's a wild guess. Completion of the project itself, I don't have a clue, but at least the numbers that we've been thrown at for the entire remediation was 31 million. Again, that's about 2 years old. The assessment cost total per our finance director is about 519,000. And then we have the phase 1 construction of Taxiway Bravo. That's an ADOT grant. That's 1.3 million, not 1.4. And you can see the breakdowns in regards to the funding there. Our amount will probably be 140,000 or less. And then the security fence relocation, that's the federal FAA CARES Act. They just gave us 69,000. We just need to spend it on something airport related, and frankly, that's how we'll move the fence over by the crosswind runway. Now, when we get into the local projects, things are kind of interesting. You'll see that first paragraph there, where I have 5 projects listed. Just from the time that we finalized the budget. Well, let me back up. I had a CIP local project list that would choke a horse. A whole mess of projects from last year that rolled over into this year. With the COVID situation, basically, backed away from that. All the city departments backed away from their original budgets. So that 5 projects you see there was the second reiteration. Now, up to about Friday, the 13th, you'll see that just based on changes, the terminal landscaping, which now is estimated at 30,000, the segmented circle, the entry rockscape for the sign, the lighted sign out there, both of those are 6,000, and that leaves about 10,500. Now again, this tends to be kind of fluid. One of the things we didn't count on back when we did the budget was $8,500 for an entry sign to the airport. That could happen this year, that could happen next year, but just so you have a sense of, on the local items, the fluidity of that. Below that, we get into the budget for maintenance, improvements, and equipment. Basically, what you see there is I've gone through all the line items in the budget, which get kind of repetitive, and there's close to 2 pages of that. And I'm not going through each of those items. If you have questions, I'm sure you'll ask. And then I speak to marketing. We selected a marketing firm from the Northeast about a year ago. I did not attach the service proposal. I will get that to you. I apologize for that. They've completed some projects up to this point, one of which Gary mentioned was the white paper in regards to the Facebook for the airport. The contract as it's written, I think we're sort of stuck with it. It runs for about another year, so we need to hit them up with additional projects for that contract. I've come in contact, well, I haven't come in contact yet, but I've been told there's an outfit that does marketing and real estate of airports in hangars, large hangars, that's up in the Northwest, I believe Seattle. I want to start talking to them in regards to a follow-up and basically use their real estate background, knowledge, and contacts in regards to any kind of executive hangars that we're talking about out by Taxiway Bravo after it gets rebuilt in that first phase. You'll see some budget numbers under that, which talk to marketing, and those were throughout the budget. And then you'll see some other paperwork that's attached that talks to the budget. The first bit is the FY21 adopted budget. It goes through personnel costs, supplies and services, internal services, capital outlay, transfers, grant funds, airport capital improvement funds, total transfers, contingency, total expenditures. Then you'll have a piece that breaks out both the airport and industrial. And I believe those are incomes, those are revenues. And then the last 2 sheets basically is a breakdown of the monthly expense report as of July 31st and all the line items there. And again, it shows you the yearly numbers, the percentages used that month. And so I do apologize. This is a lot of information. I would suggest to the group that you all have the opportunity to study this, and we bring it back to our next meeting, our next regular meeting, and delve into the details. Any questions?
Well, I have one, Steve. On the second batch of sheets, there's a expense there of 518,000 or something like that for an assessment on the draw site. And then in a subsequent chart, about half of it comes out. Is this money that we have to front and then the DOJ picks it up? I don't understand what, if they're paying for it, why are we paying at all at this point, or are we not?
And we are not. This is 100% DOJ. I don't know the accounting reasoning behind this, but it's shown basically on our accounting. But no, that money is 100% DOJ. We are not paying that up front. It's not reimbursable. They are paying that bill.
Well, there's a lot here to digest, and I really appreciate you getting that to us, and hopefully we'll be a little bit more informed and have better questions at the next time. But that's I know you were under the gun since last month to get this and had a lot of stuff with the grants to finish up. So I thank you for that. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question and a comment, and Dave has one also. One of them was under equipment, machinery. It has a lease a backhoe for $70,000. Is that purchase for 70 grand? That would be a purchase of backhoe, I take it.
Yeah, originally when we did up the budget, the thought was at that time that was purchase. I've since understood, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong here, that we lease that kind of equipment. So that 70,000, I'm assuming, but I've not talked to our fleet managers in Public Works, that is that's not just a 1 year thing. That's going to be over 2 or 3 years. But I'm not 100% sure how that system works with Public Works in regards to leasing. And then we get into a whole litany of details of, okay, does our Public Works maintain this new equipment? Is the lease dynamic include the maintenance of said equipment? We've had somebody from, I think it was CAT out here, and we drove them around the airport. So there are a whole litany of different implements that we talked about that would probably be part of a lease or purchase. One being a jackhammer sort of device that's put on the vehicle to where we can start to pull out some of those old foundations, like over by the EAA, jackhammer those out and clear some of these sites to where we can actually get some form of development. But my understanding at this point, having not researched it further, is that 70 grand isn't just going to be this year, it's going to be over a period of a number of years. How many, I don't know.
Yeah, I need details on that. One other item under ground repairs above it, we have nothing that lists paint or striping. And we definitely need that. I think city's got equipment. I don't know how we'll work it, but we definitely need some paint and striping in there just to handle everything too.
And on that venue of paint, thanks to some constructive comments from Paul Gaines, we will be, in one of these days, I'll either grab you, Scott, or I'll grab Carl, going out and looking at the tie downs that are closest to the terminal, where the paint has just obliterated, where we don't impact care flight and their exit strategy for their helicopter. And then we'll borrow some equipment from Public Works and start to mark up 2 rows of tie downs so that when people come to go to the cafe, it's a little more welcoming than the current dynamic.
Speaking of transient tie downs, I'm pleased to see we're finally getting some new tie down chains and anchors. The ones we got out there were from the previous administration of the airport, and they're only slightly better than swing set chains. So that's a big plus and a step in the right direction.
Well, and Dave, too, and that's one of the reasons why bringing this back at our next meeting is not a bad thing. The idea on the 23,000 was that area with millings that's up by Hangar A, that's out by Taxiway Charlie. The idea at one point was prior to Kingman Airline Services getting all those RJs and Embraer jets there, putting in tie-down cables, anchors, and chains up there for Ameriflight should they want to park additional metro liners. I think we can do a far cheaper job and far better job on our tie-downs in regards to chains, especially if we're talking 2 rows or even 3 or 4 around the terminal. That'll be far, far under that number. But again, once you've all had a chance to look at those numbers, I'm sure you're going to have some detailed questions about, well, what is this for? What was your plan? How's it morphed? And like that. So thanks for the question.
Sure.
Steve, real quick,
Any other questions?
on the backhoe, on your question, that will fall under a master lease. That is what the city's new position was this last year, that the contract that they have set up with Enterprise really lent itself to getting much more backhoe for the money. And so it'll fall under a leasing plan. So, but currently we do have access to anything in the public works yard that's free. We can use their backhoe equipment and also from parks if we desire to use it as an interim step.
Good. Yeah.
Any more questions? If not, Gary, you can start on economic development budget report.
Carl, what I'm going to share with you today is just that it's on Steve's sheet there where it says the industrial park estimated incomes. You see it on that page where it says for the airport, and then just above it is the industrial park. Land leases, building leases. As you know, that is money that we can back utilize. And then any licensing fees, and then a small amount of interest. Anything else on the way of the sales simply moves over and goes into the enterprise fund, which supports everything in the airport. Now, what I didn't prepare today was the detailed budget. Carl, that falls under the purview of our Economic Development Advisory Commission. So that all comes in under the general fund.
Oh, okay. Yeah, really, that's way outside our involvement. And what the ones you're referring to was on the second email or second report.
Yes, that's correct. It's that page, the 2 items, airport F21 estimated income and industrial park estimated incomes.
Okay. All right, well, we'll just have to digest that and go from there. Anybody have any questions on those? Okay, we'll move on to airport staff duties.
All right, well, you'll see that I have 7 pages there. There have been all sorts of misconceptions, and I think they tie back to the KAA in regards to what does and doesn't get done here, what duties we do and we don't do. You'll note that it's divided into, I believe, 5 sections. We have the airport manager for the first roughly 2.5 pages. Then we get into our airfield maintenance technicians. And I thought it appropriate to basically put in the mileage or acreage of what these folks are maintaining, because it's rather huge, which you all know. There's 2.5 pages to that. Our administrative assistant, Janie, what she does, and that's about roughly 2 pages. And then the assistance we get from Lisa on special projects. So that all being said, any questions in regards to this? And again, it's a lot to take in. If you all want me to bring this back at some point, that's fine, but any questions?
This is Bill. I have a question. Regarding the inquiry we got from Mr. Gaines, there was a big concern about airport maintenance. And he had a high interest in how things are prioritized and ultimately scheduled. And this kind of ties to this report because you're right. There's a tremendous amount of tasks that have to be accomplished. I was just wondering, I know you've submitted another report, but since we're on this, could you address how tasks are prioritized in your office?
Oh, certainly. Number one, I meet with the maintenance staff and Janie on a daily basis. It's one of the reasons why I'm here for 10 or 11 hours daily. And we go through what's going on. In essence, it's crisis management. And again, I think I can throw Gary under that bus. I know I live that way. My maintenance people do. Janie does. We react. So whatever is the highest priority for the day, we deal with it. Now, one of the things based on Paul's comments that we're talking about is a large whiteboard, probably in the break room or the operations area or the bay, wherever it's best put, and then starting to attempt, and there's a key here, attempt to schedule time. As you know, we have 3 people. They kick butt, in my humble opinion. We get a lot done. Unlike the KAA where they had 10 people, 8 people. And again, it was a different dynamic. And I think the focus was predominantly the industrial part. We do get a lot done. But that all being said, there's certain things that we do on a regular basis. We do nighttime checks, light checks out on the runway. We check the fences and the security of the facility, which ties back to what Carl was talking about with animals. That's done on a daily basis. But regular schedule for sweeping. So one of the things we've been talking about is Wednesdays or Thursdays. Based on complaints from Lake Havasu Airport, some flight instructors there. Anymore before we do a runway, we put a NOTAM out the day ahead. Because as you all know, the ASOS we have here, we can't put any messages on it since it's federal. If we had an AWAS, we could put a message on just prior to going out there. But as a courtesy, because some of the flight instructors were having issues since there'd be a sweeper on the runway and we do give way and we get off the runway lickety split, we figured, okay, we'll put a NOTAM out a day ahead of time. But just establish some regularity here. At some point, I will talk with Mr. Gaines and we will start sweeping a path across that lovely dross ramp so that at the very least he can tug aircraft across there with hopefully no major issues. Even though our legal team has basically said that ramp is supposed to be verboten, nobody's supposed to use it. We'll put some signs up that basically say taxi or tug at your own risk because there's just no way to get to some of the businesses without that at this point. Does that answer the question?
Well, I have a
Yeah,
comment.
yes. Well, yes, you did answer the question, which was how you prioritize, and you went well into detail, and that it, from what I understood you to say, that it is your plan to put up a big whiteboard or whatever you want to call it, maybe a big map of the complex and pin it for things. But going down that road, and I want to make something very clear. I realize that we cannot agendize every citizen inquiry we get, but some of Mr. Gaines' inquiries are things we've been dealing with anyway, and I think it's a good idea to go ahead and let the public know how we're dealing with those things. So Don't think that every comment we're going to get, we're going to have an agenda item, because we just can't do business that way. However, Mr. Gaines did bring up repeatedly with me about FOD, FOD, foreign objects and debris. I know that you clear our gates, our drive-through gates, which seems to be a source of FOD coming onto the airport. How do you, as an example, how do you prioritize FOD?
Once we're aware of it, once I either drive out there or the maintenance guys drive out there and we see it, or Mr. Stutzman would make a comment to it, or any of the rest of you for that matter, give me a phone call. We verify it and we go out and as soon as we can, we take care of it. In the case of the hangar gate, the way that area is designed, unfortunately, seems to pool all of the FOD, both from the hangar ramp and the access road coming up to it, in a little depression that's just on the air side of the gate. In some of the instances, our sweeper, when you're getting into close, tight-in areas like that, doesn't work all that great. So in some instances, until we have the opportunity with a local project, which I think we had scheduled, if I recall correctly, last year, to basically go in there, rip out the sensor strip, repave the entry road in, make it wider, move the keypad up the hill to where it's less inconvenient. That will take care of some of that. But in the meantime, it's a matter of give us a heads up, and we'll stick it on the list. And just as soon as we can get down there and clean it up, we will.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just have one comment on it. When you start looking at a plan of all the tasks, the very important thing is how much time does it take to mow an acre? How much time does it take to sweep a mile? And when you start putting labor units on all these things, we may very well come up where we've got more hours needed than we have people. So now we have to change our priorities. And I don't know of another way of doing it other than just whoever screams the loudest, or the crisis situation. And we're certainly in the way I see it, moving towards a planned maintenance program, allowing for it rains at certain times, and that's when things happen, and weeds grow after the rains and so on. So there's always going to be some adjustments, but on the average, I think at the end of the year, we'll have about the same amount of labor units in all of these different categories.
One item looking at my list, and this ties back to the Vice Mayor's comment earlier this afternoon. I don't think I have on here is the draw site in regards to my duties. So again, my apologies. It's a very major project, and it should be the top of this list. So I'll revise this a little bit. But again, sorry about that.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the staff duties? Okay, well, let's go to the oil recycle station.
So we've had a request, and this is something that it's one of those projects I just haven't gotten to. I've talked to my maintenance crew about it. At some point, we'll probably do a field trip down to Lake Havasu. They have a relatively simple oil station down there off the end of some of their T hangars. I think we can do something. I think we can do it relatively inexpensively. Probably the major issue there is going to be how the oil is recycled. That is to say, if we have to pay somebody to come and take it away, we do belong to our FBO, who used to use it in a a furnace that they had. I guess one of the things I would ask for input from you all is, where would you like to have this? Where it doesn't impact some of the other uses that we've got going on. And again, something that's simple and straightforward. I think at Havasu, we had 55-gallon drums. We had an area where people could put oil, typically in milk jug sort of containers, into a little cabinet. We would pour the oil into the 55-gallon drum, then we'd have Parker Oil pick it up. And I think those pickups were about once every quarter per year. I'm assuming we would do something similar to that here, or possibly pickups which is sooner than that. So any sort of suggestions or thoughts you have in locations, or maybe there's a better way to do this that's simpler than what I'm outlining like that.
I would
Steve?
suggest putting it over maybe by where the dumpster is, because it's kind of a central location for the smaller aircraft owners. And then also I wonder, how do the auto parts stores handle it? Because my understanding, a lot of these places are required to offer oil recycling. And is there already kind of a system in place that we could just get attached to? I'm not sure how that works, but they do all have recycling bins, I believe.
You know, we can research that. I'm not sure how that works.
Steve, I believe the city motor pool, they change all the vehicle oil. And what are they doing with their oil? Maybe we could collect it and
Utilize the same.
utilize the same process.
Great idea.
This is Bill.
You're right on.
I like Tim's idea about placing it by the dumpster, but here's my concern. Everybody that comes on the airport is not necessarily airplane owners. I'm afraid that it's going to get utilized from non-airplane owners if it's out in the open. Tim, would it be too inconvenient if the drum was in the maintenance shop and we could go there during the week? Or is it something we need to have access to on the weekends?
I would suggest a lot of people would want to use it on the weekends.
Yeah,
So if it's locked away on the weekend, that could be an issue.
yeah, I agree with that too. I guess we could try it by the dumpster, which is a great area by the hangars, and just see if it gets abused.
We can give it a shot.
Yeah, I was going to add, for a while we had problems with use of the dumpster, where somebody was just completely packing it with stuff that didn't appear to come from the airport. That seemed to go away as best I know. I haven't seen a major issue with it. And maybe kind of the threats of surveillance and things like that scared off the people that were using it for convenience. And hopefully that would stay in place if we do the oil.
Yeah, let's give it a try.
I've talked to Leonard about this a number of times over the years. He has, until he closed up his maintenance shop, had drums there where anybody could come in during his normal business hours and dump it. He said had it outside and he got everything but what he wanted, and it was an absolutely a horrible mess, and it was totally unacceptable. I've been putting my oil in a 55-gallon drum, and when I fill it up, I take it over to Leonard's, and he puts it in his about 2,500-gallon tank that he heats with. As long as he's got oil, it's an oil heater. If not, it's natural gas. So whoever ends up in that building, if they're going to have a shop, they're gonna heat it, and they're gonna want the oil. If we can have it in the maintenance shop and somebody's there, and that they're sure it's oil and not hydraulic fluid. There's some things that if you put any of it in there, the recyclers will absolutely not take it. So it's not a simple problem, but the solution could very well be to one way or another get the oil to the shop, and and I don't know how much there's going to be. We might get, store up a few drums, and he might still take it if we just moved it from the maintenance shop, over to his place until it's full. I'm sure whoever takes it over next would love to have a full tank of heating oil.
If we put it out where it can be used by aircraft owners, and then it goes to the city's, the city probably makes money on recycling the oil. I don't know, but maybe somebody just picks it up for free. But they already have a plan in the works for doing something with the oil. They're not. Do you know what it is, Gary?
I do not, but I'm sure you're right on that. They do have a way of disposing of it. I mean, with the amount of vehicles that we have on any given day over there. So that probably is fairly, that which should be our next call. I guess for you all, it would be decide is this a viable thing to put out there? My concern is what a couple of you have brought up, and that is, if we contaminate it, it's not a good thing if we don't be able to watch that. So
can I say something on that? The automotive people had a real problem because there's always people that's dropping antifreeze and stuff in it like that. And aviation oil, you don't have too much of that. And I think that our oil may be more desirable because we wouldn't have any of that contamination.
Also, I think the idea to give it a try is the way to go after we make sure that our automotive maintenance can take the oil. But I think if we post a sign wherever the drum is and advise, motor oil only, no transmission, no anything else, whatever, that might help. And I think it's worth a try.
Okay, any other input on that? All right, move on
Just-
to rates, fees, and net.
Carl, I would just ask who is taking that step to speak with the city folks about that?
I can give a call tomorrow and basically find out how they deal.
Thanks.
Okay, rates, fees, and analysis.
Okay, again, this is something I would suggest that we bring back the next meeting to where you can all have a chance to basically look it over and analyze it and think about it. But this is the draft of our report from the Aeroplex in regards to the rates and what I'll call some form of a CPI increase. When you read through this, you'll see that their idea of an increase wasn't annually, it was every 5 years, which actually I think probably is more akin to what we do here. What they did not put into their report is some examples of how to do it. At Havasu, what we ended up doing, and it was in the long-term land leases, it wasn't in this sort of dynamic. I think it was an annual increase, if I recall correctly, and it was no less than 1%, no more than either 3 or 4%, and it was based on the Phoenix CPI. So there are a number of different ways to approach this. And again, they didn't talk to that. But the other thing I would say is at our next meeting, if this report looks like it's covering most of the bases, we get them to be part of our meeting and present this to you all. You'll note that there's a lot of federal, I'm going to call them attachments to this based on FAA guidance. I think Carl came across a lovely advisory circular that deals with FAA compliance, AC 5190-6B, I believe it is, where they go into nauseating detail about how things are supposed to work. There's some of that in this report as well, which ties back to the reasoning why we do these things. You'll see one bit in here that speaks to cost centers. And the premise basically being that, if I recall correctly, some of our tie downs, which I believe are $25 a month, are some of the lowest, if not the lowest in the state. They speak to upgrading those and matching, I believe, like Havasu's rates, which are $75 a month. One of the things, and again, the budget information you got earlier in our regular meeting today, one of the things to think about here is, okay, so, and I've seen airport managers go both ways on this. Do we adopt an approach where every cost center has to make money? Or are there some cost centers based on this community and our unique place in the world that we keep it lower in? And again, I'm not saying we go this route, but maybe one of those would be open tie downs for people here because the surrounding wealth or lack thereof of the community. So it brings a whole litany of further questions in regards to how we want to approach this. But you'll see in the comparison here, and you will all get copies of this with a 11 by 17 spreadsheet in the back. You can actually read, and you don't have to have a microscope to read it. But the airports that we were compared to: Prescott, Flagstaff, Sedona, Cottonwood, Lake Havasu, Marana, Gila Bend, Goodyear, Glendale, Deer Valley, Page, Chandler, Mesa, and Casa Grande. So it's a pretty extensive, broad list. So that being said, and again, you all haven't had a chance to really go through this in any level of detail yet. Any questions?
I have a question. This is Scott.
I have one too.
Can I get an electronic copy of it
You bet.
where I can see that, especially the data they were using to bring out the rates? Or whatever?
Everything else is visible, is it not? It is on my computer, except for those long, narrow charts.
Yeah. Yeah, and if it's in Excel or PowerPoint or whatever, you can give me a different format. That'll work. I'll take it.
Yep, we can do that. We'll get you an electronic copy, and we'll also get you a print version as well.
Having been on the subcommittee that did the research before, we had a number of those same airports involved. We had Prescott and Flagstaff, and we had 15 airports. Sounds like they had about the same number. We came up with some dramatically different numbers. So I'm interested in, have there been that many increases since the year ago when John and I did it, or what?
You need the data.
Yeah, we gathered the data and had some different numbers. We were only doing hangar rents. We weren't doing shade or tie down. One airport that's not on there, from what you said, was Williams.
Winslow.
And there's Winslow wasn't on there, and there's some others that are, but the hangar rents at Goodyear and Deer Valley were much less than they were at a number of other airports. In fact, they were on the lower end. So I'm curious as to how they were coming up with some of their numbers.
I can ask that question in regards to Deer Valley and
Goodyear. They're both subsidized.
They're both subsidized, and when the Phoenix Airport's system took them over, that was one of the key factors, was to get all of the GA and business, or at least the GA users, out of Sky Harbor. And at least what I've been told by a number of people that work for the Phoenix Airport system is they don't anticipate ever raising those rates because they don't want any of those users back at Harbor. But again, it's substitute down in Sky Harbor to these other sites as well. If I remember right, Deer Valley, as of last year or the year before, they were taking a $900,000 subsidy from the city of Phoenix to operate.
Yeah, I was going to add one of the big concerns back, I don't know, it was a year or so ago, Dave, that we revisited the information you collected. But there were two things. One, we're talking about what rate increases should be in place. But our concern was that based on the information that was collected back then, we were really right at the top of the list of pricing for hangar space. We were right at the top within cents, I think, per square foot of Flagstaff and
Yeah,
Prescott. And that we're talking about, well, why are we talking about increases when we're already way out of our league in pricing?
Flagstaff was the only one that was higher than we are. And they were higher by about 1.5 cents per square foot.
Yeah, I remember.
Well, and one of the dynamics with this whole thing, you'll note, well, actually, when you have a spreadsheet you can read, and I apologize for that, but what you'll note here is we went into a lot more detail. And again, the premise here is to bring this to you. I'm not at this point saying that we should raise a rate. And I don't believe, well, the consultant might be saying that we should, but the bottom line here is there's a whole litany of detail that you all need to look at.
Yes, yeah, we got to look at it first.
Yeah, this is not a matter of, oh yeah, let's go and be the highest rates in the state. Not at all. And that's why I brought up the whole dynamic of cost centers, which sort of equate back to an earlier item on the agenda, and it's sort of a policy dynamic, which is what you are all about. So from the standpoint of bringing in revenues and all of that in a broader context, where do we want to focus rates that meet the state standard or exceed it? And then where do we want to have rates that are lower with the intent to attract additional users or people that are going to have a 30-year, 25-year land lease to put up their own hangar and house their executive jet or their turboprop or their general aviation airplane?
Well, one more thing I think we need to consider is this is a revenue stream for the airport, but the primary revenue stream for the airport is the large aircraft that we're storing. They bring in significantly more money than the hangar rents. And so is this a service that we're providing, or are we trying to make money on it? There's a number of city services that are there for the benefit of the citizens, fire department, police department, parks and rec. I don't think any of those various departments turn a profit. And we're not trying to turn a profit either. We're just trying to maintain. So if we can maintain with the lower rates and support our budget needs, then why would we need to increase the rates?
Well, we're going to look at the data, and then we can tell what they're talking about. Right now, I can't see the data. We need to really look at data and see what's going on. And I agree.
That's all I got to say.
A lot of good points, well taken. Another factor that's not in there at all, and we have no idea what it is if we build a new building, what would the rent have to be to cover the new building? I can remember in San Diego where you build an apartment house, you didn't expect to cover your expenses for 5 to 10 years. But then everybody's made millions off of those apartments. So inflation is always part of the issue. Interest rates are. My understanding is that most deals don't pencil out at the industrial park. With today's interest rates, I don't know, I don't understand why. I know steel's gone up a lot. Last week lumber doubled. I think it's come back down, but there's other factors that come into play, and it'd be nice to have new hangars, and they'd be competitive with our rates that we already have. That's a total unknown to me. Okay, any more comments on that? Okay, a letter of concern from local citizens. I think we've covered everything from Paul's letter, and I do not believe, there's somebody correct me if I'm wrong, well, that's the only letter we received. Citizens on concerned citizens.
I believe that was the one letter. And again, you can see from a marketing standpoint, again, I'm really into the context. So I think there are a number of things that we are doing to market. Now, it's not in the traditional sense. It's not like a website where you just put up an ad and you run with it. What we're trying to do is convince the state and the region, and maybe to a degree the nation, that indeed we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're investing a ton of money. We're getting a whole lot of fast-track grants. And that all sets the stage to show that we're in this for the long haul. This is not a flash in the pan. This is not one administration dynamic. No, we're going to run the airport. We're going to make it viable and all of that. So it's not in the traditional marketing sense. I think as it was outlined in the letter, but again, it's giving all of you sort of a context of all the different things we're doing, which are kind of amazing in their own right for such a short time frame. And for all intents and purposes, a startup operation with very little record, and making this move forward. Does it mean that we're there? No, not at all. Does it mean that we're not going to market? No, we are going to market. But again, and I'm a dinosaur, and I'll admit that, from my standpoint, being one of the last of the baby boomers, what lights my fire basically is personal contact. And so, I'll just throw the idea out here. Some of you have already heard it. So if we get a decent FBO here, or even say if we don't, and we want students from the universities down at Deer Valley and Goodyear and some of these other airports coming here, then in my mind, what that's going to mean is going down and meeting with the association that deals with all the flight training down in the Phoenix area, doing a presentation to them, meeting those people, and establishing a relationship. Yes, you can come up here. Yes, you can use our conference area. A cut on fuel would be nice. Some sort of deal with the cafe would be nice. But you see where I'm going with it. It's a matter of just advertising on the computer. For me, and I'm a dinosaur, and I'll admit it, it doesn't do it. But if I meet somebody, if I respect that person, it's like when I used to wear nice clothes. I'd spend $1,000 for a sport coat. And that's because when I go to that store, we'd have a conversation for 2 hours. I knew about his family, he knew about mine. I wanted to do business with him. And so again, maybe I'm an acronym that needs to just go croak, but from my standpoint, I think that's still really important, even in today's world of COVID. I think it makes a difference. And to be honest, in the 33 years I've done airports, that hasn't been done. Airport managers don't go to the customer. They don't meet with them. They don't ask them their ideas. We sit back in our offices like an old spider waiting for some ant to come in. We're going to catch him and eat him. No, we need to go out. And I would say that for all of you on the commission as well. You're great at spreading the word, but I think that's really important. And I'll get off my soapbox and my morals lecture. I apologize.
Okay. I have a question, and this comes from my discussion with Mr. Gaines. He had a suggestion that in the terminal building we have an A-frame sign or something like that that very clearly says welcome uh, to Kingman Airport, uh, and maybe list a few things that we have going on. And he also mentioned press releases, and our new pilots lounge would be an ideal topic for a press release, welcoming pilots to our new pilots lounge. So these are cheap, almost free ideas. They're very simple, and maybe it would help pilots feel more welcome and get them back a little more often. So, um, but other than that, the major marketing things that we talked about are are important are important as well. But those easy little signs, I know we have a big sign outside that we're talking about, but an A-frame sign inside is a good idea, and a an attractive sign on the pilot's lounge door would be nice too, opposed to a photocopy of a Word product. So,
And we're in total agreement that yes, it will be a nice metallized sign that will last and look nice. Yeah, no, no chintzy copies, please.
Um,
Gary, are you still there?
Yeah, I sure am. And I guess I take exception to your sign option there on the doors. And I will. The thing that was designed to do was, again, to recreate that World War II look stencil type of thing. And so any deviation from that, I guess I would be a little disappointed, because the idea was to recreate and take advantage of what we do have here, which is the World War II treasure. Certainly agree that we could put up more signage. We have already talked about the press release, but we really have just a couple of little things that we have to buckle down and buckle up. That is the passcodes and everything on the doors, so that the day we tell these pilots you can come, it's all right there. And so there is some loose ends. Those signage that Steve referred to, I think those need to go up and be done as soon as possible. That coating on the doors needs to be changed. This is not something that I do. They were installed, so then now that needs to be taken care of. So again, I would hope that the committee would see it the same way, that let's keep that vintage look with the new technology. You have all the other tools that I think that you all have requested to be put into that pilot's lounge, and so, but we will certainly continue to be open to any ideas or anything that will enhance the situation.
so Gary, this is Bill. I know you put a lot of effort into that lounge, and we appreciate that. But my question is, who is ultimately responsible for finishing that lounge?
Well, right now, the only things that need to be done are, as Steve noted, would be the signs, and that would fall to Steve. And then the coating, which again, I'm just assuming, but Steve had mentioned that it would be done between he and Carl. They would come up with the codes on the doors, and that's really all that's left. I mean, there may be some minor tweaking internally, but for the most part, that's done. So I noted earlier that Carl had pointed out that window that was cracked. That's fixed today, and then that photo that was on there will be restored. Unfortunately, we lost that when we had to take out the window. So
The only other
Gary, you want to talk about the things that's coming out from tourism to be in the terminal? This is not the pilot's lounge, because I think that we're talking about the same people being able to see it.
I've got one more comment, if I could, Carl. Once we get the signing up, can we please get rid of the outhouse over by the over by the fuel islands? I mean,
I'll leave that to Mr. Johnson.
There you go.
Dave, that's your memorial outhouse.
Granted, it's a version of World War II, but I don't think that's the way we want to promote our airport. And if we can get some signing up over there, directing the pilots to the pilot's lounge and the cafe, and the restrooms in the cafe through the pilot's lounge, that would be the best time I can think of to remove the porta potty and move into indoor plumbing.
Well, that's really disappointing because Steve had actually requested me to approve a two-holer last week.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
I agree.
Are the pilots going to have access to the restrooms through the pilot's lounge after hours?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay, I was not aware of that.
There are coating on both doors.
Excellent.
Okay, on the letter, before we get too far off on there, I've heard a number of things that do address items on this, especially items 1, 2, and 3, which are all related to marketing and public relations things. And I'm happy to hear a lot of those things are being addressed. And I think it's fair to say we've never had a really all-encompassing discussion on how these things are going to get approached. So I see these as legitimate concerns. Again, the good news is I hear a lot of good things happening related to these items here. And, you know, in full disclosure, I'm associated with Paul Gaines in a lot of different ways. Many of them are not money-making. We're doing a lot of things to help promote the airport and aviation. And I doubt few here would say he is not one of the most passionate promoters of aviation and this airport that we have. So I take all these points seriously, and we may all have them in our own different priority levels. But one thing that's come up, I'm curious about is on his item number 5, which is talking about draw site access to his repair station. And this is a question. Is the airport obligated to provide him safe access for aircraft to his facility? I've heard stories that may be the case.
that's my assumption, but that's an assumption.
Yeah, I mean, even from an FAA perspective, he's an FAA repair station, yet he is now in what people at least are talking about is not an aircraft operating area, not even an approved area to take an aircraft into. So I'm not sure. I mean, to me, that's a serious concern for somebody whose business is working on aircraft, that we can't, and maybe this is even a liability concern, taking an aircraft across an area that we're now talking about as making as use at your own risk. What if something's damaged? I mean, he's handling very expensive pieces of machinery.
Well, again, from the master plan standpoint, that whole area is aeronautical. Now, getting into the practical aspect of navigating around those volcano mounds, I guess the dynamic here is the legal team that's working on the dross, that's advising Carl Cooper. They're looking at it from a legal standpoint, and their standpoint also is giving the city the best stance to get DOJ to repair that to a degree. And then we go after FAA to basically bring the strength coefficient up to where it meets exactly what you're talking about, Tim. Some form of normal aviation use. From my standpoint, in the meantime, and again, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not an aviation lawyer. It seems to me that if we put signage up that satisfies our dross legal team, and of course, well, I'll just say satisfies the dross legal team, and I might be a little too optimistic here, that tugging aircraft across, taxiing, no. Even if I still had my 172, I don't know that I taxied across that area. There's no way. Now, tugging it, that's a different matter. And I don't believe that the pavement is so thin as to not be able to hold, I'll say normal general aviation aircraft. But taxiing across, yeah, I can see where there's an issue there. I think in the meantime, we can sweep across. Once we establish a path, we can sweep that area to where the FOD opportunity is reduced. But what I don't want to do is get into a situation where we start making repairs and all of a sudden we have a CIP project that's going to cost $31 million and it's all out of our pocket, when it really ought to be out of DOJ's. And then if we can leverage the money, get some money out of FAA. So I'm trying to reach a compromise here, at least in the short term, is at least my approach.
Yeah,
Steve, when do you think you could have that path swept?
I need to talk to Paul. We probably need to walk it and decide where that path needs to be. Then put some form of a marking out there, which will be non-standard. I think there's one right now that's out there for Cassie. And then he has a pathway until we can sort this out properly.
yeah, as mentioned during the, I think it was during the master plan, we were talking about some of these related items. Two things, I see Taxiway Bravo. Of course, time is what decides a lot of these things, but Taxiway Bravo renovations, I think, can alleviate a lot of this. And assuming that there isn't a miracle and the draw site gets dealt with, which is what everybody wants to see, but we have no idea on the timeline really until we start hearing back from DOJ, is my understanding. But just as a thought, and we're not going to solve this here right now, I understand, but if Taxiway Bravo was all renovated and open for operations, is there any possibility that an area could be top coated, just sprayed, and I think the city may even have the equipment to do this, just to vacuum up a lane, go from Taxiway Bravo over to Alpha Zulu Composites, and just spray a top coat to glue the stuff down as an interim, short-term, low-cost fix.
And when I first came here, seems like a lifetime ago, a year and a half ago, that was one of the projects I think that I alluded to. The legal team, once they got wind of it or understood what I was talking about, because I think it was Brewer's coat that I was going to use as some sort of product, they used it at Havasu on all the connectors, which is why when you taxi out to the runway at Havasu, the connector's in pretty good shape. The runway, on the other hand, because it didn't get a Brewer's coat treatment, is in pretty sad shape. But that was the idea. Roughly about 6 months ago, maybe 7, our legal team basically said, no, you do anything like that, and our case with the DOJ goes down the toilet. So that question again, and I can pull in our airport engineer and talk to those folks and basically see if there's any way we can make that work.
Yeah, and you're talking about just a coating, right? Like a sealer type of thing.
Just a coating and just a pathway.
Yeah, because that's what's been done over at EAA on their apron. That's how that's maintained, is just by every several years going out and putting down a coating over the asphalt to keep it together. So, okay, I don't know. I feel like it's a tough situation all the way around, and I understand that. And I would hate to be the one having to deal with the government side of this, with the federal government. But at the same time, I think we put one of our few successful aviation businesses on the airport in a real box out there. And hopefully there'll be news coming sooner than later about the draw site. But I understand it is not in your control. We're just hoping, we're keeping our fingers crossed. In the meantime, we're just really trying to come up with something to alleviate the problem.
I'm not privy to all the DOJ meetings. That's a very specifically small group. But Steve is right, is that every time that we have looked at attempted anything of an interim measure, it was always with the thought that it came back that you will jeopardize your DOJ agreement. And so we really have addressed a number of things to make that, a better situation. There were requests for parking. My God, that put them right on the moon when we said that. So absolutely nothing like that whatsoever. So it is really a fine line, and it's unfortunate that we have to walk that. But we'll continue to certainly work with Paul in any way we can to to make it. You know, we certainly realize his importance to Kingman and to the airport here. So it's a toughie.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I appreciate that to some degree, how bad of a situation we've got.
Well, I see the report that Steve submitted addressing all these concerns, and throughout today's meeting, I think we've touched on them, if not gone into detail. And I want to thank Steve for preparing that very long memo describing what's being done and what some of the obstacles are. So thank you.
And I concur with Bill, but I would like to ask a question. What that draw site, that the problem there existed because of aluminum that was buried and then started corroding and expanding. That took 80 years. Why isn't there a way to do a temporary fix there until they can get the proper one done? I mean, I think if they just bulldozed those volcanoes, as you call it, off, and then put some asphalt over top of it, it'd be probably 20 years before this stuff would start rising up again.
Well, part of the problem with the whole draw site is that mess was located there. As I understand it, in the either 70s or 80s, it was somewhere else. They dug it up. They dug lined pits, placed all that stuff, placed dirt on it, and didn't have any project managers, which is one of the reasons why I'm such an ass when it comes to project management. So no project manager, nobody on site. They compacted it somewhat. They didn't put 4 inches of pavement on it. They put 2 inches or 1.5 inches. And it was a local contractor, I gather, they used. So just classic construction screw up, beginning to end. But yeah, it wasn't originally in that site. They moved it around, which is why DOJ lost the case, which is why DOJ is having to deal with it and deal with us. But yeah, there don't seem to be any quick fix dynamics. And again, DOJ, as you've all seen in the news, they sort of march to their own tune. So you just have to work the process and be patient. As frustrating as that is.
It's so, in my mind, it's so important now. And Paul is talking about leaving because, I mean, he's seen companies, very important clients that wanted to come down and locate close to him. And when they see there's no timeline on the draw site, they just back out immediately. And he's already reached out all over the area to see where he could move. And his employees have said, yeah, we'll move with you. But I mean, we lost Matt Zybeck, and that was a big deal. And mainly because of that, and who knows what the long-term ramifications could have been with all the fire bombers and everything there. And now that he's got his repair station, he started that repair station because the city took over the airport and he saw changes coming and it was going to be a good deal. And his statement says there seems to be a level of dysfunction, lack of communication, finger pointing, and no sense of urgency surrounding these above cited issues. We cannot continue this way and expect changes the airport needs within a reasonable amount of time. Parking planes is a great revenue stream, great work, by the way, but the community needs more than just an aviation graveyard. Council members and citizens alike went through much in the battle with the airport authority and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to unseat that toxic situation. Some current city staff management and airport management wasn't here for the KAA battle and simply cannot fully appreciate what the city and community went through. Please note, some council members were smeared and threatened during the process by KAA members and apologists that we need to do better by them. All this is critically important in our elected city officials.
Mike, you're muted.
Well, I'd like to make a comment on that. I've been here 15 years. Matt Zymek tried to remove the volcanoes, get that done, and even the KAA made the effort. The DOJ said no. It was in a stage of negotiation for a long, long time, and the actual suit was filed, I believe, about 3 years ago. And that was very quickly settled because it was only, I think, one point of law that needed to be resolved. So I'm as frustrated as anybody, but I think that the DOJ is just an immovable object based on their time. You know, the city attorney and the engineer and can do what they you know, they try to negotiate and come up with something, and it may work. But I think the getting into to that area with a big airplane is going to have to be tugged, just like it has been with Cassie for all these years. But to sweep a path for for smaller airplanes, that should not be a problem. But they won't allow any modifications or repairs, so there's going to be two little bumps. They're going to have to slow down to taxi over, and that's where they go from concrete to asphalt or asphalt to concrete. So it's unfortunate, but we're stuck with it.
Seems like the DOJ is running up against FARs, FAA regulations. I mean, it's supposed to be safe and everything. And I mean, how do you deal with that?
On that point, this is a book that I just had made.
Oh, great.
You see it's thick. It is the FAA order 5190.6B. Any of you would like to borrow it and see what sponsors are required to do? It's in that book, but it's also on the internet. So everything that we've talked about that's an FAA requirement and what was in the original transfer agreement has been incorporated into this book too, as part of the grant assurances. So there's I question whether there's a responsibility. It is a way, yes, a way to taxi. No, I think there's no question they got to maintain runways, taxiways, and normal airplane operating areas. But just space, I think it's a tough argument. Oh, I do have one other announcement, and I don't know if I mentioned it last month. Doing exactly what Steve's talked about. I talked to people about moving their airplane here. If I run into anybody, I've got a citation 10 that will move to this airport and build the first jet hangar on the new taxiway B. And my suspicion is that if it's under construction, he'll start the planning and permitting and construction on his, excuse me, on his. So you get the first one and then they can start coming. So there are possibilities, and that should occur sometime within a year and a half. The second section should be done, but it should be late spring, the first section of next year. And so we're talking about less than a year from now, we could be moving on a jet hangar. Any other announcements?
Yeah, this is Bill. For next month's agenda, I would like for Janie to again advise us of our terms, our commission terms. I know we did that several months ago, but I'd like that renewed. And I would like discussion and possible action about how often and how we select chairpersons for this commission.
I appreciate that very much. That was a discussion item today. Since it wasn't on the agenda, I didn't bring it up, but I have planned for that. And there's one question that's got to go through City Hall, but your point is very well taken, and it will be there next month.
Great.
So what I'm reading beyond those two items, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong on this, we will be bringing back the airport budget report, go into detail on that. The oil recycle station, the rates and fees. Is there anything else?
And then we had an agenda item on the process on new commissioners
Yeah,
and
the maintenance subcommittee.
yeah, well, that'll be the maintenance subcommittee discussion and action. Any other announcements? Any other commissioners?
Is it too late to ask Steve a question?
No, I don't think so.
I should have asked you this when you do in your staff report. I had a local pilot complain to me about some cars that were in the hangar, and I said I would ask, I'd bring it up in the meeting. I know it's been brought up before. You know, any update on those cars?
Funny you bring that up. We've discussed it now twice in two different meetings. Actually, this will be the third time today. So I was showing hangars, and the people I was showing who are from California, what's this? And then it came up in a meeting with the city manager and Gary, and I think Carl as well. And now. So yeah, no, it's something we need to address. The cars need to go out of the hangar to where we can lease it to somebody with an airplane.
I think what you need some clarification here, those are not just any cars. Those are actually electric automobiles that we didn't have room for in the museum downtown. We actually have them stored at other facilities too. The city has been attempting now for about a year to look at establishing a electric car museum, and that would facilitate it. So yes, it did come up today, and yes, we will be looking at where we can do these cars. In fact, because when we get down, I'll talk tomorrow to Steve about so we can catalog and see what we have there and where we'll be able to take these. So they are special automobiles. It was done as a courtesy to our tourism section, which has the museum at the powerhouse.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or anything about availability, the next meeting or agenda items from any other commissioners? All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much for all the participation.
Thank you.